G'day, Chief. Welcome to the Inner Chief podcast and this special episode, which we call the Mini Chief. These are short, sharp highlights from our fabulous CEO guests, where you get a 5 to 10 minute snapshot of the highlights from their episode. Righto, Chief. Without further ado, here is the Mini Chief episode for this week with Jeremy Hastings, founder and managing director of Hutly. You launch Hutly, it's going along well, and you're quite open about the fact that as the business grew, you started to get a few things wrong, maybe a lot wrong, to the point where the board actually asked you to step out of the CEO role. And when I hear this, I go back and I think, geez, it sounds a bit like Steve Jobs when he was fired from Apple, right? But then later, you did come back. So can you just, first of all, the emotions when the board said you're out of the business you founded, but then what did you have to do to look inside yourself and grow?
Yeah, it was brutal. Very, very difficult period of my life. So I look back and I think there was two elements. One, I hired a whole lot of people who didn't have technology experience, and I hired them because I knew them and from my mining days and through my personal networks. And in hindsight, what I actually did was I set them up for failure and I set the business up to have a really tough time. And then you couple that with, your own learning journey. You don't know. So, I would very much back then put me as a first-time founder, making a whole lot of mistakes. And I had a very difficult stakeholder at the time who I think I managed well, but it didn't lead to a great outcome on a trial that we were doing in Queensland. And so when the board asked me to step aside, we had some tough news from that stakeholder, had a whole lot of staff who were very unhappy with my leadership style. And when the board said, hey, you need to step out, I sort of listened to it. Under the shareholder agreement, I could have said no, bugger off. But I think when you're getting a tap on the shoulder like that, you really need to stop and take some time to reflect. So, and I don't hold any ill will for the board at the time. And ironically, it was the same board that then voted me back in, me back over. So I think they acknowledged that I'd gone on the journey that I needed to. And the journey was a mix. There's a clinical psychologist that I engaged to look at, from a leadership perspective and from why was I demonstrating, some undesirable behaviours and going all the way back to, early development, childhood, etc., and understanding and breaking down those relationships and those impacts. And then I had an executive coach and a mentor sort of helping me through, what are the skills you need as a leader and how do you build out that toolkit. And then I think Alan Bird, who was one of the directors, said to me, the best experience you're going to have is actually sitting on the board. And so I was chair of the board, co-chair initially with the existing chair, and then that co-chair stepped into a director role and let me continue chairing the business. We hired 2 CEOs during that time, and it gave me a different perspective. You're looking at it from a shareholder lens, from a governance lens, from a risk lens, and looking at how's the actual, the ability to step out of a business. And so how's it actually performing? What are they not seeing? What are they seeing? And going through that process. So it gave me perspective I hadn't had before and the ability and time to really work on myself and change my behaviour. So fast forward to March last year, the business was not going well. We were burning too hard, burning about 257 grand a month. CEO at the time, I think, is a highly capable individual but wasn't the right person for that stage of the business. I think had we been a little bit later, they would have shone. But being that really tough in the trenches, manage cash day to day is a very different skill set to, you've got 10 million in the bank, product market fit, and you're growing funnel. And so I sort of acknowledged that we needed a big change. And so I put a plan to the board to say, hey, I think this is the change that we need. And it involved some really aggressive reductions in headcount and a narrowing of our focus as a business. But a month later, we were cash flow positive and we're back. We've doubled our revenue and market size since.
You talk about that shift in perspective from being, in the business to being external. And one of the things that we talk a lot about on this show is that ability to work on the business. As you rise up through the ranks, that is the work of your role, not all the time, but a certain significant percentage of your time as a senior leader is to work on the business. I just want to get to the heart of how the paradigm shift and how it makes you think about an organization differently when you spend time on a board. I mean, you're in the heart of this business. You're heavily involved in the operations and the people side, and all of a sudden, you're on the outside, and you're only getting the reports. What did this do for you? Like, I'm just trying to get to the heart of it. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so I think three things were my big takeaways. One, Rome wasn't built in a day. I think when I first had a crack at founder CEO, I had this unrealistic expectation of people around me, and an unrealistic expectation of how fast the business should be moving. And that was purely, this underlying driver in me that, that things have to be done today, can't be done tomorrow. And really unhealthy when you're leading people in a business. So it took me some time on the board to look at how some quite seasoned CEOs ran the business and were a lot more patient, and also knew that they could only solve for sort of one problem at a time. And so we're very calculated in the way that they ran the business and solved for some issues. So that was one thing. The other one was not doing business with yourself. And Hutly has a really bad habit historically of doing business with ourselves. We focus more around, and this is probably looking back at my corporate experience as well, a big problem in big corporates is you worry more about creating systems and procedures, and you get in this really vicious, dangerous place of thinking that you're doing important work, but actually you're not focused on customer and revenue, and therefore you're being ineffective. And so I kind of looked at the business back then, and we weren't hitting revenue targets. We weren't doing everything we should do, and that's because we spent more time looking at ourselves rather than focus on customer.
Can I just ask a bit of a question? When you shifted to the board, how did you realize that? Was that because the two CEOs were coming and all they were ever talking about was internal things, as opposed to, was it just not enough customer spoken about at board meetings?
Yeah, well, I was an executive chair, so I was still involved in M&A and the commercial activity.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I still had day-to-day insight into where the business was at and how it was going. But yeah, 100%. Like I remember having discussions, even as a board, that if I heard them in a board meeting now, I'd say like, well, time out. Like this is bullshit. Like that's a problem we can worry about in 10 years when we're big. Like right now, our world is kind of simple. We're through the chasm of death in startups, so big tick there.
Yep.
But now it's about getting the foundations right and putting the right people in the right roles in the right functions to be able to getting our go-to-market funnel working, getting those fundamentals right. We can start worrying about some of the luxuries, I call them, later on. And I think we spend more time focused on things that we weren't big enough yet to actually turn attention and energy to. That creates lack of focus, it creates confusion in the business, and gives air to things that really probably don't need air at that point in time. Not that they're not important, but giving air to things that aren't that important at that point in time.
Righto, Chief. There you have it for this week with our mini Chief episode. Chief, all the links, all the resources to Jeremy and everything we've got there can be found at chiefmaker.com/322. And if you'd like to stay in touch with Chiefmaker, just go to chiefmaker.com/subscribe. Now, are you in need of an operating rhythm? An operating rhythm is that schedule of meetings. Actually, it's a bit more than that. It's a system, the drum and beat of your team. And what it will do if you get it right is it will create the culture and drive the results. It will bond the team together. It will handle risk, help you see around corners, create creativity, embed the rituals and traditions of your team. There is so much that an operating rhythm can deliver when done right. So Chief, if you'd like to know how to do that, just get our full free resource on it. Just go to chiefmaker.com/operating rhythm, and there is a detailed PDF there with all the hows and whats and whys, some of the pitfalls, and an example schedule for you to follow. chiefmaker.com/operating rhythm. and create the drumbeat for success in your team. Righto, Chief. As always, remember to stay epic.